Well, hello everyone, welcome to the video, welcome to me, your lovely host, Christian Moss, and as always, it is so good to be with you today. Well, this week marks the succeeding week of the very tumultuous and turbulent period that was Election Day in America. Joe Biden and Kamala Harris are the apparent winners of that competition, and they will be sworn in to office in early January of 2021. Now, when I watched both of their acceptance speeches, I couldn't help but think to myself that there was a very ominous dictatorial strand running through their speeches, or sort of divine quality that they were assigning themselves, and they were saying they could exercise through the position that they had just been given. For example, Joe Biden said that he would secure the soul of America, whatever that means. If it means what I think it means, it's impossible for the president to do that. And not only is it impossible, it's imperceptible for anyone in political authority, as America's soul rests in all of us. But this made me think, are we about to see the ushering in of an era of dictatorial impulses? And of course, this relies on a lot of things to happen in reality that may or may not come by. Of course, this relies on the Senate election to go over to one party side and for there not to be a balance of powers as the Senate was meant to be. But just as a thought experiment, and considering the policies of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, I have devised a method to detect if their plans could lead us to a dictatorial path, or if I'm simply just being silly here. This method is rooted in objective metrics such as the laws of reality, particularly the laws of nature, which provide for the natural rights of all human beings. This method is very simple. If anyone seeks to usurp the individual's authority to exercise peaceably his or her natural rights, that is, his or her rights to life, liberty, and property, and the exercise thereof, that person is exhibiting a dictatorial impulse. And particularly, this person has to be from the government. And they have to be, of course, exercising arbitrary power to prevent the exercise of these rights. So by using these methods, I have determined an answer, I think, but I'm going to walk you through my process. Number one, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris do not follow the objective laws of reality that constrain imagination. So everything in this world is ordered according to a certain metric. For example, the way we walk, talk, and everything is ordered around the universal laws of gravitation, friction, and things of that sort. The laws of physics sort of bind our ability to operate in this world. Similarly, the way we conduct trade, the way we talk, are also bound by laws. And Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, at least in their website plans, appear not to want to care about those laws. For example, in Joe Biden's manufacturing plan, he thinks he can thwart the laws of economics and artificially prop up demand by pouring money into industries that deal with manufacturing and operating at World War II levels with the government intervention. Of course, for those of you who do not know, during World War II, the government nationalized several industries and redirected the individual energies of workers towards a concerted war effort, which led to the development of the atomic bomb and led to a massive, decades-long Cold War, which has resulted in the mass amounts of violations of rights, many more than have been seen in modern history. Joe Biden wants to go back to that kind of government to redirect a certain American prosperity for the economy. But of course, laws of economics do not lend themselves to artificial tampering of demand. Demand exists because interest exists, not because Joe Biden says so. But he wants to dump money into something and then create demand, in absolute ignorance of laws of economics. A willingness to disgrace the laws of economics, and thus the laws of reality, is also a willingness to disgrace the laws of natural rights, which provide for human liberty in the exercise of life, liberty, and property. And you don't even have to have a thought experiment to see Joe Biden doing this. On his website, Joe Biden has a binding plan to root out firearms, the prosperity of firearms, the proliferation of firearms in the United States, because apparently they are causing significant amounts of violence. Now, of course, we understand what the issue is here. We understand that firearms, in many instances in America, are A, people's legitimately acquired property, which makes them protected under property rights, and B, firearms are also, in many areas in America and the world, the most effective way to defend yourself against the specter of people who would seek to squash your rights and harm you and your family. But for Joe Biden, he has already said he's going to ignore the laws of reality, and he has created his own reality where guns are fueling this epidemic of violence in the United States and therefore threaten everyone. And so by this broad utilitarian calculus, we must get rid of guns. So on his website he says that we must get weapons of war off our streets. The website actually says, quote, "The bans on assault weapons and high-capacity magazines that Biden, along with Senator Feinstein, secured in 1994 reduced the lethality of mass shootings." And of course, he argues that they need to put those bans in again. But of course, as I mentioned, he's ignoring the laws of reality. Or, I guess, just ignoring reality itself. Assault weapons is often a misnomer for guns that have a certain cosmetic, or aesthetic style that may not lend itself to being pretty and kind and warm, but are no more dangerous than your average handgun. But again, for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, it does not matter. The reality that they have created through their language is that these weapons fuel an immeasurable violence problem in America, and they're going to be the deities, the divine people who come in and save us. And so point 3, which I've determined through this method, is that dictators, like Kamala Harris and Joe Biden, oftentimes scapegoat a problem which prevents them from getting to their goals, and said that problem must be removed before they can obtain their goals. For Fidel Castro in the Cuban Revolution in the 50s, this was Batista, of course. Then, of course, when Castro comes in and nationalizes everything, he acts very much like Batista. For Lenin in the Russian Revolution, this was the whites, the followers of Tsar Nicholas. Then, of course, when Lenin comes in, he acts very much like Tsar Nicholas. The point is this. Dictators, historically, have had scapegoats, and they've had imaginations, and they have used their imaginations to confuse people and to make them think that they are doing something higher and virtuous. But when they actually get into power, they end up violating rights. Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, while they are not gun-toting Cuban revolutionaries, and they are not Russian revolutionists, they are most certainly individuals that have higher imaginations, and who have no problem imposing those higher imaginations upon the American people with as much force and wit as a dictator in a third world country would. Indeed, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris' idea of reality, which ignores, as I mentioned before, the laws of reality, and therefore ignores the laws of liberty, which allow human beings to live and allow Americans their unique station in the world, their idea of reality is simply incumbent upon them and the idea of force to move change. There is no self-moving agent in Joe Biden and Kamala Harris' reality. There is only force. And of course, when you have that kind of thinking, when you think that you have the ability to restore America's soul, or to do anything, simply because you have the force, the manpower, the weapons to do so, you are not someone who acknowledges the truth of change, who acknowledges how things really are, who acknowledges the principle of growth by which human beings grow into change. You are not someone who operates in reality. You are someone who is creating your own heaven on earth. As Lenin said, the first step of any revolutionary is to confuse the language. And if you confuse the language, you can no longer operate by objective meanings, since language is one of our ways we communicate objective meanings. And if you can't do that, how can you operate in a reality? They don't. So it is my submission to this method that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris are nothing more than dictators in the making. And the question is, how are you going to react? And how are you going to apply this method to snuff out other dictators in this political system and shine the light of illumination on them so that their policies can be stopped through peaceful action that our republic permits us to undertake? Think on it. As always, my friends, I love you, and please stay pensive.